Girlfriend cheated and said I'd never find anyone like her because she was out of my league. A year later, I started dating a model who had a crush on me since high school. So, I was scrolling through Reddit the other day, and I came across this post about a guy whose girlfriend was cheating on him, and she didn't even care. She was completely open about it, like it was no big deal. It was wild. And it got me thinking about my own ex-girlfriend. I haven't really told this story to many people, mostly because it's kind of long and, well, it was pretty painful at the time. But after reading that post, I figured, what the heck? Might as well give it a shot. This all happened about 2 years ago, so keep that in mind. I met my ex, let's call her Chloe, on a dating app. It wasn't one of those apps where you're just looking for a quick hookup. It was one of the more serious ones, where people are actually looking for a relationship, or so they say. Anyway, I was 33 at the time, and she was 30. We matched, started chatting, and there was just this instant connection. It's hard to explain, but we just got each other. We had the same sense of humor, like the same kinds of things, and could talk for hours without getting bored. It was really refreshing. After a couple of weeks of talking online and on the phone, I finally asked her out on a proper date. I was a little nervous, to be honest, because she was just stunningly beautiful. I mean, really beautiful. Like, head-turning, jaw-dropping beautiful. And I'm not saying I'm a troll or anything. I think I'm a decent-looking guy, but she was definitely in a different league. I remember thinking at the time that I probably wasn't going to be looking for anything super long-term with her, just because, you know, girls that look like that usually have a lot of options. I didn't want to get my heart broken. It's a weird problem to have, I know, being with someone who's too attractive, but it can bring its own set of challenges. Anyway, she said yes to the date, and we had an amazing time. It just confirmed everything I felt from our online chats. We started seeing each other regularly after that, and it became official pretty quickly. One thing that was always kind of in the back of my mind was the amount of attention she got from other guys. She'd tell me about it, sometimes even when we were together. Like, a guy would blatantly hit on her right in front of me, or she'd get messages from guys on social media. At first, I wasn't too bothered by it. I trusted her. I really felt like she wasn't interested in anyone else, that she was genuinely into me. Stupid, I know, but that's how I felt at the time. I was just enjoying being with her, and I didn't want to be the jealous, insecure boyfriend. Things were going great, really great. Except this one little thing came and went, still stuck in my head. We were having one of those silly late-night conversations, the kind where you talk about all sorts of random stuff. And the topic of hall passes came up. If you don't know what that is, it's basically a hypothetical situation where you and your partner each get to pick one celebrity that you'd be allowed to sleep with, no questions asked. It's supposed to be a joke, a bit of fun, but sometimes it can reveal some underlying thoughts. Anyway, she brought it up, which I thought was a little odd. Usually, I'm the one who starts those kinds of goofy conversations. She said her hall pass was Justin Timberlake, which, okay, fair enough, he's a good-looking guy. But then she said something that really stuck with me. She said, I don't think there are many celebrities who would say no to me. And she said it with this little smirk, like she was completely serious. Now, I know she was beautiful. I knew that. But hearing her say it like that, it just rubbed me the wrong way. It was like she was acknowledging that she could have pretty much any guy she wanted, and that was a pretty uncomfortable thought for me. It felt out of character for her, too. She'd always been pretty down to earth, despite her looks. This just felt arrogant. It made me uneasy. I didn't say anything at the time. I just kind of laughed it off, and we moved on to another topic. But that comment lingered in the back of my mind. I kept thinking about it for the next few days. Eventually, the feeling faded, and things went back to normal, but I never completely forgot about it. So, things were going along pretty smoothly for a while after that hall pass incident. But then, I started noticing a change in her behavior. It was subtle at first, but it became more and more obvious over time. She started coming home later than usual. Normally, she'd be home from work around 6 p.m., but she started getting in at 7 o'clock, 7:30, sometimes even later. And the reasons she gave were just lazy. She'd say things like, oh, I just lost track of time, or I ran into a friend and we chatted for a bit. Stuff like that. It was weird because she used to be really detailed about her day. If she was late because of work, she'd tell me exactly what happened, what project she was working on, who she talked to, all that. Now, It was just these vague, throwaway excuses. And on top of that, she started getting really irritable. If I asked her anything about why she was late, she'd snap at me. She'd get defensive and say I was being too controlling or that I didn't trust her. I didn't want to fight, so I usually just backed off. I'm not a confrontational person, especially when someone's already in a bad mood. But the late nights kept happening, and the vague excuses kept coming. My suspicion started to grow. It was like a little voice in the back of my head saying, "Something's not right here." I tried to ignore it, but it was getting harder and harder. Finally, I just straight up asked her if something was wrong. I said, "Is everything okay? You seem different lately." She denied it, of course. She said, "No, everything's fine. I'm just stressed with work." The usual. I wanted to believe her, I really did. A few days went by with the same things going on. I couldn't hold it anymore. I told her, again, that her behavior was different and that I was concerned. She seemed to hear what I was saying. In fact, she apologized, saying that it was all due to stress and tiredness, promising it wasn't personal. I heard what she was saying, but I couldn't get myself to believe it. After that conversation where I told her, things actually seemed to improve, at least on the surface. She was more receptive, more communicative. When she came home late, she'd give me these explanations, these stories about what she'd been doing. But they just felt hollow. There was something about the way she told them, the lack of detail, the way she avoided eye contact, that just didn't ring true. I remember one specific night, she came home late and told me some story about running into an old coworker and having drinks with them. And I just knew she was lying. It was like a light bulb went off in my head. I can't explain it, but I just had this overwhelming feeling that she was hiding something, something really big. And that's when the thought first crossed my mind, she was having an affair. It wasn't just some minor thing, some misunderstanding. This was a full-blown affair. I knew I couldn't just let it go. I couldn't just pretend everything was okay. I had to know the truth, one way or another. Her behavior had changed so drastically from the woman I first met, it was impossible to ignore. This wasn't the same person I'd fallen for. Something was definitely up, and I was going to find out what it was. My mind was made up. Okay, so I'm sitting there, convinced my girlfriend is cheating on me. The first thing that popped into my head was, I need to check her phone. I mean, that's where all the evidence would be, right? Texts, emails, social media, everything. But I quickly realized that wasn't going to work. First of all, she was always on her phone, so getting it away from her long enough to do a thorough search would be nearly impossible. And even if I did manage to get it, I'm not exactly a tech wizard. I wouldn't know where to look, what to look for. And she'd probably have deleted anything incriminating anyway. Plus, I wanted proof. I didn't just want to find a suspicious text message and then have to confront her about it. I wanted to catch her in the act, to know for sure, without a shadow of a doubt. So, I decided to go a different route. I decided to hire a private investigator. Yeah, I know, it sounds like something out of a movie, but I was desperate. I needed to know the truth, and I needed someone who knew what they were doing to help me find it. I wanted to know who this guy was, where they were meeting, everything. I did a Google search for private investigators in my area and found one with pretty good reviews. I called them up and set up a meeting. I remember feeling so nervous walking into their office. It felt like I was admitting defeat. I sat down with the investigator, a guy who looked like he'd seen it all before, and I told him everything. I went through the whole story, from the beginning, from the hall pass conversation to the late nights and the flimsy excuses. It took a while, but he just listened patiently, nodding occasionally. He didn't judge me, he didn't make me feel stupid. He just listened. He said he'd seen this kind of thing 100 times before. He said that, ideally, he'd like to do surveillance for 2 weeks, since her late nights were inconsistent. But that was going to be pretty expensive. We ended up agreeing on 10 days. I gave him all her information, her phone number, her email address, where she worked, everything. He told me not to contact him before the 10 days were up, unless there was an emergency. He said it would be difficult, but I needed to let him do his job. I agreed. I knew it would be torture, but I had to trust him. Those 10 days were some of the longest days of my life. It was agonizing, knowing that this investigator was out there, following my girlfriend, potentially uncovering evidence that would confirm my worst fears. I felt so helpless, just waiting, wondering, imagining all sorts of scenarios. It was really hard to focus on anything else. Work was a nightmare. I couldn't sleep. I barely ate. And the worst part was, she kept coming home late during those 10 days. 3 times, she came home after 9 p.m., with the same old lame excuses. Oh, I had last-minute plans with some friends, or traffic was terrible. She had no idea that every time she said those things, it was just reinforcing my belief that she was lying. And each time she was late, I thought, okay, this is it. This is when the investigator is going to catch her. It just gave him more opportunities to gather the evidence I needed. Finally, the 10 days were up. The investigator called me, right on schedule. He didn't say much on the phone, just that he had the information I requested and asked if I wanted to meet in person. I said yes, absolutely. I needed to hear this face to face. I couldn't handle getting this kind of news over the phone. I'd been waiting for what felt like forever, and I needed to see his expression, to know for sure that what he was telling me was the truth. I drove to his office, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. I felt sick to my stomach. I walked in, and he was sitting there, a manila envelope on the desk in front of him. He gestured for me to sit down. He asked me if I wanted him to just explain what he'd found, or if I wanted to look at the contents of the envelope myself. I told him I wanted to hear it from him first. I figured it would soften the blow a little bit. I compared it in my head to the alternative being, like, walking in on your partner cheating on you. I needed a buffer, a moment to prepare myself. He took a deep breath and said, "Your suspicions were right." Just like that. No beating around the bush, no sugarcoating it. He told me that he'd followed her to an apartment building 3 separate times. Each time, she went in alone and left about 2 hours later with the same man. He'd gotten the apartment number and the guy's name, Cody. I'm changing the name, obviously. My first thought, honestly, was that I wanted to find this Cody guy and, well, let's just say I wasn't thinking peaceful thoughts. But then I realized that wasn't the point. The point was that my girlfriend, the woman I loved, had betrayed me. That was what I needed to focus on. He slid the envelope across the desk. I opened it, and there they were, pictures. Pictures of her and this Cody guy, in front of the apartment building, embracing, holding hands, kissing in front of her car. It was all there, in black and white, undeniable proof. I nearly lost my mind. I mean, I really almost broke down right there in his office. It was one thing to suspect it, to have a gut feeling, but it was another thing entirely to see it with my own eyes. The visual evidence was just overwhelming. I managed to hold back the tears, but it was tough. It wasn't just the affair itself, it was the thought of my whole life, the future I'd imagined with her, just crumbling before me. I was just unsure of what to do next. All I knew, I wanted to get to the bottom of this. I was going to confront her. I got home, and I just asked her to sit down. I didn't yell, I didn't make a scene. I just calmly said, "We need to talk." She knew something was up. She could see it on my face. She sat down, and I just laid it all out there. I told her I knew about the affair, that I'd hired a private investigator, that I had proof. Her initial reaction was shock. She just stared at me, her mouth slightly open. Then, she tried to compose herself, to act like it was no big deal. But I wasn't having it. I told her everything the investigator had told me, about the apartment building, about Cody, everything. And she just sat there, silent. She didn't deny it, she didn't apologize, she didn't even try to explain. She just sat there and listened. And the more I talked, the angrier I got. Her silence was infuriating. It was like she didn't even care, like she wasn't even remotely sorry for what she'd done. Finally, I just couldn't take it anymore. I told her I wanted to break up. I said, "I can't do this anymore. I can't keep playing this song and dance. I'm done." And then, she did something I absolutely did not expect. She laughed. She stood up, like she was trying to intimidate me, and she started this whole monologue. "You want to leave me?" She said, "Are you kidding?" So what? I had a little bit of excitement on the side. It was just physical, it didn't mean anything. I'm a cheater, fair. But where do you think you'll go from here? Do you think you'll ever get someone like me again? Hasn't it been clear to you over the years that I'm out of your league? It was one time. Is that what you want to destroy our lives over? She said a bunch of other stuff in that same vein, basically trying to make me feel like I was the lucky one, that I should just be grateful to be with her, even if she cheated. Can you believe that? I was just stunned. I mean, I knew she was arrogant. I knew she thought highly of herself, but this was a whole new level. This wasn't the reaction of someone who was sorry, who was caught, who wanted to make things right. This was the reaction of someone who didn't give a damn. Someone with a real effort attitude. A real crash out. It was like her ideal scenario was for me to just accept that she was too good for me, that she was going to do whatever she wanted, and that I should just be happy to be along for the ride. She honestly thought I would not have the guts to leave. That's how much pride she had in herself. Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. I'd been hurt and angry before, but this was different. This was pure, unadulterated rage. I'd never felt anything like it. I stood up, looked her straight in the eye, and told her exactly how much I despised her. I don't remember the exact words, but it was something along those lines. And then, I just walked out. I didn't pack a bag, I didn't say goodbye, I just walked out the door. I couldn't stand to be in the same room with her for another second. I felt completely and totally betrayed. It was over. I ended up spending that night in a cheap motel. I couldn't go back to the house, not yet. I just needed to be alone, to process everything that had happened. I lay there in that uncomfortable bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the confrontation in my head over and over again. I couldn't believe how she'd reacted. It was just unreal. The next day, I went back to the house to get some of my things. I figured she'd be at work, but she was there. She looked like she'd been crying, but she was trying to act all tough, like nothing was wrong. And then, get this, she had the nerve to say, "I knew you'd be back," with this smug little smirk on her face. As if I just had a little tantrum and come crawling back to her. I didn't say a word. I just went inside, grabbed some clothes, my toiletries, a few other essentials. I knew I couldn't get everything at once, but I just wanted to get out of there as quickly as possible. I told her I'd be back for the rest of my stuff later. She just stood there, watching me, with this look of disbelief on her face. Like she couldn't believe I was actually leaving. She didn't say anything until I was walking out the door. Then, she just kind of mumbled something under her breath, but I didn't catch it, and frankly, I didn't care. I've been trying to piece together why she acted the way she did. It's still hard for me to wrap my head around it. I think, maybe, she was looking for some kind of validation, some kind of excitement outside of our relationship. Maybe she was feeling insecure about getting older, about our routine. Maybe she saw me as this safe, reliable, cuddly husband type, but also someone who was, in her mind, beneath her. And maybe, because she'd always felt that way, she didn't see the cheating as a big deal. She'd already justified it in her head. Of course, this is all just me guessing, trying to make sense of something that doesn't make sense. After I left, she started texting me. The first few messages were just mocking, sarcastic stuff. Like she thought the whole thing was a joke, that I was just going to come running back to her. She clearly thought I was bluffing, that I wouldn't actually go through with leaving. But then, a few days later, I went back to the house with a friend to get the rest of my belongings. And she was shocked. She couldn't believe I was actually serious. I think that's when it finally hit her that it was really over. One of her last messages to me was, "I hope you know you'll never find anyone like me again." Seriously. I just blocked her after that. I couldn't deal with it anymore. It was just too much. Okay, so let's fast forward a bit. The whole breakup with Chloe was a mess, obviously, and it took me a while to get my head straight. But life goes on, right? A few months later, it was time for my 15-year high school reunion. I wasn't really sure if I wanted to go, but a few of my buddies convinced me. It ended up being a really good time. It was great seeing all those old faces, catching up with people I hadn't seen in years. Just a really positive, fun atmosphere. And then there was Veronica. Now, Veronica was in my class back in high school. She was this tall, absolutely gorgeous girl. We were friendly, we had some classes together, but we weren't super close or anything. She was one of those girls who was just effortlessly cool, you know? After high school, she'd become a model. A pretty successful one, too. I'd seen her in some magazines and online ads. If you're into fashion, you might even recognize her name. I hadn't spoken to her in at least 7 years, maybe more. So, I'm at the reunion, having a good time, and I noticed that Veronica isn't there. But her best friend from high school was there. They were still super close, which I thought was cool. It showed that Veronica hadn't changed that much, despite her success. I went over to talk to her friend, just to say hi and catch up. We were chatting, and she had this huge smile on her face the whole time. And when I mentioned Veronica, her smile got even bigger. She leaned in and said, "I know she's going to kill me for telling you this, but you know, she's always had a crush on you." I just laughed. I mean, come on. Veronica? A successful model? Having a crush on me? It seemed completely ridiculous. We didn't even run in the same circles in high school. We were friendly, nothing more. There was no way. Plus being a model now? No chance. It was flattering, of course, to think that someone like her might have found me attractive, but I figured it was probably just a high school thing, something she'd long forgotten about. I told her friend that I doubted Veronica even remembered me. But her friend insisted. She said that Veronica had actually asked her to check me out at the reunion, to see if I still looked as good as I did in high school. And then she said, "She's still into you, so if you're single and you're not scared of girls with baggage, you might as well give it a shot." I spent the rest of the night thinking about that conversation. It was just so unexpected. It felt good, I'm not gonna lie, to know that someone like Veronica was interested in me. Especially after everything that had happened with Chloe. It was like, here was this woman who my ex would have definitely considered out of my league, and she was supposedly crushing on me. It made me realize how meaningless Chloe's words were, how much she tried to tear me down. It was a real confidence boost. So, after the reunion, I decided to take a chance. I figured, what did I have to lose? I decided to hit Veronica up online, as the kids say. I found her on Instagram and sent her a message. I also told Veronica's friend to let her know I was going to message her, just in case she didn't check her DMs from people she didn't follow. I didn't want my message to get lost in the shuffle. And then, I waited. And waited. And waited. 5 days went by, and I didn't hear anything. I'd actually completely forgotten about it, to be honest. I figured she was probably busy, or maybe her friend had exaggerated things. I wasn't too bothered by it. But then, finally, she replied. And her message was so enthusiastic. She wrote, "Oh my gosh, Keith, it's been so long." Now, I've heard people say that the more times a woman repeats letters or messages to you, the more she's into you. I don't know if that's actually true, but it definitely seemed like a good sign. We started messaging back and forth, just catching up on, well, pretty much everything. We talked about high school, about what we'd been up to since then, about our jobs, our families, everything. After a few days of that, Veronica suggested we switch to FaceTime. She said she was tired of typing so much. I was happy too, of course. And we started video calls almost every day. It was during those video calls that I really started to learn about her life as a model. She told me all about the industry, the travel, the photo shoots, the ups and downs. She was in Brussels at the time, working on a campaign, and she even sent me some pictures from the set. It was fascinating, and it was so cool to see her in her element. It also helped us connect on a deeper level, even though we were thousands of miles apart. After a couple of weeks of talking almost every day, it really started to feel like we were dating. We hadn't officially called it that, but it definitely felt like more than just friends. So, I decided to be a little corny and just ask her, "What are we?" She laughed and said that we were really good friends, but that she'd love to be more. I took that as my cue and asked her if she wanted to be my girlfriend. She said yes immediately, without any hesitation. It was such a great feeling. Now, obviously, the whole long-distance thing was a challenge. She was a model, traveling all over the world, and I was here, with my regular job. I'd had a long-distance relationship when I was younger, and I absolutely hated it. It was so hard to maintain that connection, to feel like you were actually part of each other's lives. But this was different. This was Veronica. And she meant so much to me already that I was willing to do whatever it took to make it work. So, I booked a flight to Brussels to visit her. She was going to be there for a few weeks, working on a project, and I figured it was the perfect opportunity to see her and to experience a little bit of her world. The trip was absolutely beautiful. Brussels itself was amazing, of course, but being with Veronica there was just incredible. It was like a dream come true. It made me realize that I shouldn't give up on love just because of one bad experience. That there were still good people out there, people who were worth the effort. She even took me to one of her photo shoots. I got to watch her work, see her in her element. I cheered her on from the sidelines, took some pictures of my own. It was so cool to see her doing what she loved, and it made me feel even closer to her, like I was really a part of her life. So, I'm in Brussels, having the time of my life with Veronica. I took a bunch of pictures of the photo shoot, and I decided to post some of them on Instagram. I didn't post them to my main feed, though. I put them on my close friend story, thinking it would just be seen by a small group of people. Here's the thing, I completely forgot that my ex, Chloe, was still on my close friends list. I rarely use Instagram, and I just hadn't thought to block her there. I blocked her everywhere else, but not Instagram. Big mistake. A few hours after I posted the pictures, I get a message from her. Remember, we hadn't spoken in over a year at this point. And the message said, "Who's that? Why are you playing groupie?" Followed by a laughing emoji. I calmly replied, "That's my girlfriend." I didn't say anything else. She didn't reply right away. I could see the little typing indicator pop up and disappear multiple times over the next 10 minutes. Like she was writing something, then deleting it, then writing something else. Finally, all she sent was a sarcastic "sure." That's when I decided to go for it. I told her that I didn't need to make her believe me. And then I said, "If you thought you were out of my league, then Veronica is out of this world." I also asked her how her man from back then was doing. I knew that would sting. She read the message, but she didn't reply. And then, I blocked her on Instagram. I know, it was probably a little petty of me to say those things. But honestly, I felt like she deserved it. And I didn't want her to have any more access to my life, any more opportunity to try to get under my skin. Even though, I wanted to see her reaction. I will admit that. And that, my friends, is the story. It's been a wild ride, to say the least. But I can honestly say that I'm happier now than I've ever been. Veronica and I have been dating happily ever since that trip to Brussels. And, I'm not going to lie, I'm thinking about proposing before the end of the year. Don't tell her, though. Veronica is truly a blessing in my life. She's kind, she's funny, she's intelligent, she's beautiful inside and out. And she makes me feel like the luckiest guy in the world. I'm so grateful that things didn't work out with Chloe, because if they had, I never would have met Veronica. I know some people might criticize me, might say, "Oh, he's just with her because she's a model, or long distance never works." But I don't care. I'm not going to let anyone's negativity ruin what I have with Veronica. She's amazing, and I'm incredibly happy. If things don't work out down the line, you can come back here and tell me, "I told you so." But God knows, I really do not see myself writing another story here. So, yeah, that's it. That's my story. It's a story about betrayal, heartbreak, and ultimately, finding love and happiness in the most unexpected place. Thanks for listening. Or, reading, I guess.